Hey guys, I'm Vicky, and today I bring you 3 of the craziest cases I've ever encountered. Let me know in the comments which one gives you the creeps the most. Let's start with the case of Leslie Palaiso. It's really shocking and disappointing to see how justice hasn't been done yet. Despite the police having all the evidence and knowing the identity of the killer, he is still at large. Today's story shows how difficult it can be to investigate crimes when suspects manage to escape their jurisdiction. And the victims can only hope that the perpetrators will be found and finally brought to justice. The morning of the 29th brought a wave of anxiety to the home of Rosalia Palaiso, a mother of 5 daughters. The eldest daughter, Kayla, came down to the kitchen and noticed that Leslie's bed was untouched, her belongings were gone, and she hadn't come home that night. One of the sisters joked that Leslie must have had a really great night at the club and probably decided to stay out. In fact, everyone was immediately alarmed, because Leslie had never done anything like this. During breakfast, Kayla kept checking her phone, expecting Leslie to text her at any moment. But time passed, and Leslie was still nowhere to be found. By midday, anxiety began to build, and in the late afternoon Raelia decided to go to Eric's house herself to find out where her daughter had gone. When the Palaiso family members arrived, they immediately noticed Eric's mother and sister removing furniture and other items from the house. Moving furniture out of a house may seem normal, but the situation in Mrs. Yar's tearful face triggered a strange feeling in Rosalia that something was wrong. When she asked where Leslie was and why Eric's phone was unreachable, Eric's mother and sister pretended not to even know that the two had spent the evening together. Rosalia persisted, asking if Leslie had spent the night there, since she knew from her daughter's messages that after the evening she would go to Eric's house. After receiving a negative response, Leslie's family immediately understood the gravity of the situation. Their fears became reality, and the family immediately took action. The older sister, knowing that Leslie could not have disappeared so easily, began calling local hospitals and searching the internet for news of accidents that had occurred in the last 24 hours. Unfortunately, the search was fruitless, as were the attempts to contact Eric. His phone was either off or perhaps out of order, since Kayla couldn't even get to the answering machine. Rosalia found herself without any other choice. Rosalia had to call the police. The next day, August 30th, Leslie was officially reported missing. This marked the beginning of a long and intense battle for justice. Leslie Palaiso was born on May 5, 1998, in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. Her life, although short, was filled with love and dedication to her family. Always sociable and friendly, Leslie was a source of joy wherever she went, appreciating every person she met and receiving the same affection in return. Leslie dreamed of pursuing a career in medicine. After graduating from high school, she enrolled at Las Vegas Medical College in 2020. Already determined to fulfill her dream of becoming a successful professional, she worked part-time as a lab technician, combining theoretical knowledge with practical skills. Leslie distinguished herself as an exceptional student, with remarkable academic achievements. She easily absorbed new concepts and was always striving to expand her knowledge. For this reason, she decided to work part-time as a lab assistant. Unexpectedly, Leslie found that she had found her true calling, and soon she became an essential part of the team, earning the respect of her colleagues who saw her not only as a responsible and professional lab technician, but also as a kind and caring person. Her duties included performing various analyses and tests, but for Leslie, this job was much more than just a task to be performed. For her, her true calling was to make the testing process as comfortable as possible for patients. Her attentiveness and patience created an atmosphere of trust, putting even those who were most anxious about the procedure at ease. Everyone felt at ease in her presence. When the youngest nurse asked her if she was afraid of constantly pricking her hands, Leslie laughed and said she had developed a super ability to prick people. Her optimism and energy were palpable in every gesture. Everyone recognized in Leslie a unique potential, destined to make her a highly appreciated specialist in the field of medical laboratory diagnostics, and she certainly would have become, had it not been for a dramatic turn of events. From an early age, Leslie was accustomed to taking care of others and helping them. As the second of 5 daughters, Leslie took on a motherly role early on. When Rel Palaiso worked as a hotel cleaner, Raelia recalled how her daughter would gently pull her away from the kitchen whenever she tried to make dinner after cleaning more than 15 rooms in a single shift. "Get some rest," Leslie would tell her, wanting to ease her mother's burden. After work, Leslie would take care of preparing dinners, and with her quiet nature, she found cooking a source of inspiration. From then on, she always made sure her family was well taken care of. Even though she was far away and could not personally prepare dinner for the family, Leslie always called home to make sure everyone had eaten. For Leslie, family came first, and she was able to easily inspire her sisters with her energy and ideas. Even during the pandemic, Leslie didn't let sports disappear from their routine, organizing workouts in the backyard. She taught her mother various exercises and danced daily with her sister, both in front of the mirror and listening to music. Her love of experimenting with hair colors and personal image turned into a business project shared with her older sister, opening a boutique. The two sisters began designing and sewing clothes at home, creating a unique style. When the coronavirus pandemic hit and Rosalia was laid off due to cuts, Leslie suggested to her mother that they start a small cleaning business, assuring her that she would definitely help her in her free time from work and school. "Mom, everything will be fine, you'll see," Leslie reassured her during a family meeting, where they together chose the name for the company, Palaiso. Housekeeping. As Leslie was finally realizing her dreams, everything unexpectedly changed. The Palaiso family had just landed their first contract, and on August 29, 2020, their plans and dreams seemed to fade away. By the end of August 2020, Leslie had graduated from the lab assistant program, and the family had also received a major order. She decided it was time to take a break from stress and worries, to spend an evening of dancing and fun, taking advantage of the gradual easing of restrictions related to the pandemic. Las Vegas was finally coming back to life, but Leslie couldn't convince any of her friends to go out with her. Even though people were starting to overcome their fears and resume their normal lives, they were still nervous and anxious about being in a crowded place. Determined not to give up, Leslie posted on Instagram, expressing her desire to spend a night out. To her surprise, she received a message from Eric Rangel Ibra. Leslie and Eric's parents had known each other for a long time. They had been attending the same church for 14 years and occasionally socialized. Thus, Leslie and Eric had known each other since childhood, although they had never had a real close relationship. Leslie was aware of Eric's interest. He often wrote to her and showed her attention, but she had never reciprocated. She was always nice to him, but until now she would have turned down his invitation to go out. This time, however, was different. Leslie felt the need to break the routine of her daily life with a fun evening. The day passed in anticipation and curiosity, and when none of her friends. When her friends declined, Leslie accepted Eric's kind offer to relive the Las Vegas nightlife together. A night out with him still seemed better than staying home. Leslie expected a fun adventure, little suspecting the terrible events that awaited her. Perhaps he had a hunch, but he tried to convince himself that there was no need to worry. As a precaution, he agreed with his sister to send her regular messages to update her on his whereabouts. He also told Kayla, with great care, all the details. Leslie informed Kayla who she was going out with, where they were going, and what places they could visit. After a while, her older sister received an unusual text. "Can you believe it? Eric isn't drinking tonight. We're at a party, but it looks like I'm going to have to party alone." The sisters continued to exchange playful messages about healthy living. Eric and Leslie's first stop was the Longhorn Hotel Casino. Police later reviewed surveillance footage, which showed the couple getting out of a white Ford F-250 owned by. At 3:31 a.m. on August 29, Eric and Leslie were filmed entering the casino, only to leave shortly after at 1:56 a.m. The couple left the casino, and Leslie continued to text her sister to update her on what was happening. At 4:40 a.m., Leslie sent a disturbing text. "I have to talk to you about something bad. Kayla asked her what had happened, and noticed that Leslie had started to type a response, but it never arrived. That message was the last one Leslie sent. When the morning of August 29th came, Leslie had not yet returned home, and as the hours passed, the Palaiso family's concern grew. What initially seemed like certainty that Leslie had spent the night at Eric's house turned into confusion. They decided to go to Eric's house, where they were confronted with an unusual scene. Mrs. Ibra and her daughter were carrying out some furniture, pretending not to know that Leslie and Eric had spent the evening together. In reality, Leslie's family had arrived just in time. If they had arrived just a few hours later, the investigation would have been significantly delayed. The police found traces of blood in the house, and the bedroom was a mess, indicating that Eric's mother and sister had spent the entire day not cleaning up the crime scene, but packing, even dismantling the furniture. It didn't look like they were planning a quick escape at all, but rather a long and careful disappearance. In all likelihood, they had planned to reunite with Eric and his father Jose in Mexico, where the two had fled to avoid justice. By the time the Palaiso family arrived, Mrs. Ibra probably realized that her chances of escape were over. In a panic, she and her daughter, leaving the evidence in the house without even attempting to clean it up, simply began to deny knowing that Leslie and Eric had spent the evening together. This behavior immediately raised suspicions that something irreparable had happened. Fortunately, the Las Vegas police intervened quickly, sending a location request to track Leslie's movements since the previous night. However, unfortunately, it took some time. Meanwhile, the Palaiso family couldn't just sit back and wait. They decided to launch a campaign to spread the word about Leslie's disappearance. The response was astonishing. Many people began sharing the news on social media, showing support that no one, not even Eric's mother, had expected. As detectives questioned her, Mrs. Ibra went to the police station on August 31st to report her husband and son missing. She told officers that Eric had left home. Mrs. Ibra said Eric had left home on the evening of August 28th, and when he returned the next morning, he was acting strange. She saw him leave again, but this time he never returned. The police noticed something unusual. Not only was Leslie missing, but Eric and his father were also missing. So the investigation expanded to include the triple disappearance, involving the Las Vegas police. Detectives reached out to neighborhood residents, hoping to find surveillance cameras that had captured something significant. Luck was on their side when it turned out that there were surveillance cameras in front of Jose Barr's house. In addition, the police obtained location data that allowed them to track Leslie's movements in the early hours of the 29th. Detectives discovered that the couple had gone to the casino and then headed to a grill bar, arriving around 2:15 in the morning. By mistake or not, Leslie's cell phone was left at the bar, and records show that Leslie left the place around 5:50 a.m., which was quite early. At 6:05 a.m., neighborhood cameras caught Eric's car pulling up to the family home. Eric's behavior in helping Leslie out of the car and into the house clearly suggested that she was highly intoxicated. At 7:25 a.m., Eric and his father Jose were filmed carrying Leslie's body, wrapped in a sheet, out of the house and into the trunk of their car. After loading the body, Eric drove away while Jose washed the driveway. These behaviors clearly indicated that Eric and Jose were not simply missing, but fugitives from justice. After reviewing the footage, police obtained a search warrant for Ibra's home, where they discovered numerous pieces of evidence that Leslie had not left the house voluntarily. The house had been swept with cleaning products in a failed attempt to remove traces of the crime. Latex gloves and garbage bags were found, but the most significant evidence was the discovery of blood in Eric's room, both on the floor and on the bed, a clear sign of assault. Without the need for DNA testing, investigators concluded that the blood belonged to Leslie.